Installs How-To Series. Today we're going to install the alternator on my 2003 F-150 Ford truck. I had a problem where I lost all power on a Saturday, and here we are on a Sunday putting it together. You can watch my other video about putting a regulator and brushes into this alternator. Amazon delivered on Sunday, can you believe that? Make sure before you work on the alternator that you take the negative battery cable off. You don't want to you don't have it on, because when you reach down here to take the positive off of the alternator, you could get some real sparks when that cable hits ground. So make sure and pull your negative cable off before doing any work. So we're going to put this alternator in. It's kind of the reverse method. Sometimes it's easier to figure out how to take something out once you've seen it out, and then you're putting it back in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install it right now and kind of let you know, it's pretty easy to take this out. One of the things that we do want to do is make sure we got a good ground. So you always want to clean your surfaces where your ground would be on your alternator. It's going to ground in 3 spots. So there's the 2 bottom bolts that go through, and then there's the top bolt, and basically only 3 bolts to get this thing out of there, plus plugging your electrical in to the alternator. 2 10mm on the bottom and a 10mm on the top. Now it's a little bit difficult to get down in there. There's this bracket right here that holds the hose. You can just loosen that up and get that out of the way. And I took my air intake loose so I could get in there a little bit easier also. So it's pretty simple, just kind of feed it down in there. And it's pretty easy to get to this top 10mm, so I'll put that in. And that way it kind of holds it in place. And then take the 2 small 10mm, get to the one that's easy to get to on this side first. And kind of long. Normally I would use my air ratchet on this kind of stuff, but that's kind of loud on a video, so I figured I wouldn't do that. And then feed the second one in. That's a little harder to get to. And I'll tighten those up in a second. Now, here's the electrical that goes on top of the alternator. Now you've got 2 plugs, so normally what you would do is take those 3 bolts out and then bring the alternator up to here so that you can get to these plugs and pry this little plastic piece out. Try not to break it. So you take it out just far enough where you can pull this plug out. Same thing on this one. You pry this out, and what I used was a little scribe. Just got in there and just pried it up just enough to where I could pull that plug out. It's easier to get to them once the alternator's out. Now it's real simple to plug them back in, so that's why I put the alternator back in first, and I'll go ahead and plug these back in as soon as I tighten the alternator up. So when you go to take the belt loose or put it back on, it's pretty simple. You've got a spring mechanism down here for your idler. You can see the idler right there. In the end of that idler, you can put a 1/2-inch breaker bar in there. And when you push towards the driver's side, you can see it's loosening that belt. Well, if you push it far enough, you can actually take that belt right off of the alternator or your idler, and that makes it real easy to pull the alternator out. Makes it pretty simple. This is a quick and easy way to get your alternator out. It doesn't take that much time. Okay, so we got the alternator back in. Remember, there's only 3 bolts to tighten up the alternator. That one on top, and then those 2 on the front side tightened up. We reinstalled the belt, and I put the 2 clips in for the electrical, and then the power cable, and then I retightened this clamp and retightened that clamp. All I did was just loosen them up and just kind of moved it out of the way a little bit so I could get the alternator back in. Then we retightened the negative. I'm going to make sure you, and then let's start it up and check the voltage on the charging. That's a good sign. There's no little battery on the dash with a so we have a charging problem. So we got my nice little multimeter here. It should be in the 13 volt range, or maybe even higher, depending on how high the battery is right now. And wow, 14.5 volts, so it's charging. Anything over 12.8 volts means your alternator is charging. So we just saved a big bunch of money. Instead of going to the auto parts store and spending $150 on an alternator, bought that little regulator and brush kit for $9. Amazon delivered it on Sunday for an extra $5. I need to go to work tomorrow, so we just saved a bunch of money, not by switching to Geico. Thanks for visiting Mr. Hall's How-To series. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you again.